make sure you hit *9 on your phone afterwards. So try to keep yourself muted until it's time for you to speak. Deputy Clerk, do we have anybody? Okay. Clock, Madam Clerk. Mr. Viveras? Mr. Viveras, if you can hear me, you have to hit *9. Mr. Viveras? Anyone else, Madam Clerk? Okay, well, okay. Okay, who's ever on right now, if you could just give us your name and address, please.
Yeah, hi, this is Paul Mankowski, 20 Pequot Lane in Middletown. Can you hear me, Bob?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay, so do I have the floor now? Is that it?
You do.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to talk to you, and also thank you for your decisive action to combine the school department, town finance department, IT facilities, and public works functions. I'm sure we're going to get a lot more visibility and clarity of school operations with the more savvy administrative capabilities on the town side. The school department budget concerns and plans for safety are commendable, but the rest of their budget continues their annual games, I'm afraid to observe. Not afraid to observe, I just observed it. 4% of the 4% increase is the maximum amount allowed. They should be level funded, and I'll go into reasons why. They also started playing a new budget game. Last week, I read an online Rhode Island Labor Relations Board decision against the Middletown School Department. Turns out the Middletown School Department retaliated against some of its employees as a result of the council's budget decisions in 2019. The board ordered Middletown schools to reverse those retaliatory actions. There is a need to fund the school department, but at the current levels to assure safety of the institution and to allow start of the school year. There are many unanswered questions that need precise answers and clarity before you consider any additional money. The questions evolve around state aid, federal reimbursement of expenses for some of the COVID stuff, the projected costs for transportation, coaching, sports, and services, and we need a better understanding of the long-range technology plans. I sensed everybody's frustration last week as I watched the discussion on computers. I can't believe 5 years after the wasteful computer purchase, they still haven't resolved any long-range computer plans. Thanks, Sean and the council, for bailing out the department again with the safety equipment and Chromebooks. There's also, finally, another reason is there's a perception of conflict of interest between Newport County Regional Special Education Programs and the Middletown School Department. I tried to get the budget information to understand it better. I couldn't find any specific budget information online. There's a professional relationship among family members. Mother and daughter negotiate. There doesn't appear to be any clear lines of demarcation. Middletown spends $9 million on special ed. Little Compton and Tiverton spend a total of $7 million. So there's much uncertainty, many questions, and frustration with the school department's continuing games. So my recommendation is level fund the department, same as last year, 26,510,694, and have them return to the council with clearly articulated specific needs as they arise in changing times. Anything else sets the stage for the continued games and possibly waste and abuse. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Paul. Madam Clerk? Mr. Viveras, if you can raise your hand. Mr. Viveras, can you hear me? Mr. Viveras, press *6, and perhaps that'll unmute you. Yes. Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Just name and address, please.
Sure. Kelly Simeone, 54 Atlantic Drive in Middletown. Just obviously feel compelled to make some comments in response to Mr. Mankowski's, not sure what to call them, allegations, accusations. I'd say much of what he said is untrue, and I'd like to go through a couple of points. I would certainly argue against the terminology of playing games. We've had, I can't count the number of hours of public meetings beginning in December of last year. I emphasize public. Every single one of our meetings was open to the public. We did have several council members attend multiple meetings and observed them. In each meeting, we went line by line through different portions of departments' budgets, asking questions and getting answers. And those answers were to our satisfaction. We made adjustments as we went through. Again, all those meetings are public. I don't remember seeing Mr. Mankowski at any of them, but perhaps he watched online or after the fact. I will say current level funding would not be sufficient for next year. That would certainly lead to drastic cuts in programming and staff cuts, as we've mentioned. It's simple math. It's not games. It's not tricky math. It's simple math, I'd argue. With respect to technology, we have had long-term technology plans. Those have been made available in our budget submissions every single year. In fact, our technology plans with respect to CIP and 5-year plans, in some ways, those plans have been halted, delayed, adjusted due to lack of funding year to year. That leads us to the position that we were in this year, where we had several devices that were at the end of our life, at the end of their lives. We had tech staff working around the clock to make sure that students had access when they needed it, and it got extremely difficult at the end of the year. It is important that every child have the same device. It minimizes teacher frustration and student frustration if they all have the same device with the same image, same applications, and we can push out updates as needed. Those are just some of my responses. Again, we had a number of public meetings. There are a few other items he mentioned that I can't comment on for legal reasons, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Deputy Clerk, anyone else? Mr. Viveras, are you there? Madam Vice Chair, name and address, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Name and
Okay.
address, please.
Teresa Spangler, 1111 Wapping Road.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to make a few comments. I agree with what Kelly said. We have had a lot of meetings. We've done due diligence with our budget. Obviously, with COVID-19, it was a completely unexpected scenario that nobody anticipated. The dollars are astronomical for the safety and health of our children, and as well as our staff who need to implement the curriculum. It's a risky scenario of coming back to school, but it's also something that's really important for our students to be able to get back into that environment for the interaction with their peers and that kind of learning that goes on in that environment. I have to comment on Mr. Mankowski's comment on family. I think that is unacceptable. It's rude. We have a lot of family members. Town council has family members in administrative positions and has for years. And so the school department shouldn't make any difference. There is no favoritism. There's no biases going on. And I just think that that needed to be stated. We have, I looked it up a couple years ago. We have 43 members, if I remember correctly, 43 sets of family members in our administrative positions or elected official positions. So I just think that that needs to be taken off the board and not brought up again. I don't think that's right. In regards to special education, we have a superintendent's board, a special education board. Our superintendent does not make any executive decisions on that board solely. It's a group of effort. A special ed is a necessity for our students who have difficulties with certain learning issues. It's not just, it's not that simple. We have children that come from out of state. We have military families that come in that we don't anticipate, and they come in throughout the year. Some come in now, then we have a November class and a February, March class, and the War College comes in and we service every student. That's the law, and that's what we're required to do. There is no cushioning of those special education services. If anything, it's very challenging for all students to get special ed because we're stretched so tightly. But special ed is a very important part of our district to be able to support our students so that every student has the opportunity to learn. That is the law, but it's also Middletown, Rhode Island's philosophy. Every student has the opportunity to learn. And I think that's something that we as a town, not just as a school district, should take great pride in. We don't ever let students fall behind because they have challenges. That would be wrong. And I think our community is much higher level of being ethical, making sure that we provide those supports for our students. So I think that the family issue needs to be taken out of the equation. I think we need to look at the services that we need to provide for our students and the dollars that it takes to provide that. On to other issues overall with our budget. We have worked tirelessly and hours have gone into our budget. It is not something that we take lightly. Once COVID hit, it became more of a strain and much more difficult and much more of a challenge to be able to stay within a dollar amount. Providing a Chromebook to our students is going to be critical. If the rate things are going right now, we're going to be in a whole different scenario in a couple of months with teaching and learning. So the consistency and the security, and we had mentioned that last week, the security of having the school devices versus personal devices are very important, especially when parents aren't going to be home, that these children are not going to be allowed to get on sites that are inappropriate. So the security is a big important part of being able to make sure that our students are safe. So I just, I wanted to mention that. I wanted to mention that we still are going to need teachers in the classroom. We are still going to need teachers to be able to access online. So I just have to mention that. I mean, no, this is not going to be an easy task going back to school this year. It's going to be something that no one has ever experienced. We're going to have new obstacles day by day. We have challenges in our district for the certain chemicals that we're allowed to use because we have children allergic to bleach. So we cannot use bleach, which is the cheapest disinfectant and sanitizing product. Unfortunately, 1 cup bleach to 1 gallon of water, a 3rd cup bleach, I'm sorry, to a gallon
Madam
of water.
Vice Chair, your time is up. I'm going to give you another 30 seconds. That's it. Wrap it up, please.
Thanks. I think I should be able to have a little more time considering my position, but I'm just saying that, the cost that we're dealing with here is extensive. And, Mr. President, don't appreciate being cut off. We have the right to speak. We are a department of this town, and we do not deserve the disrespect of being cut off when we are elected officials just like you.
You're not being
And
cut
if
off.
I go
You're being
over-
treated the same as everyone else that's speaking this evening. Allocation
Excuse
of
me.
5 minutes. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Excuse me, Bob, don't cut me off. That's not appropriate at all. Don't.
Do we have anybody else that'd like to speak? Mr. Viveras? Do we have anyone else? No new people? Is there anyone else there? Okay, Madam Vice Chair. Turn her on. Madam Vice Chair,
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
I'm gonna give you a couple more minutes, but I'm gonna caution you, okay?
Caution me. Thank you.
You're daring me not to cut you off. I'm gonna caution you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I
I'm
will
gonna give you 2
take
more
that.
minutes. Let's go.
I will take that threat of cautioning me very seriously, and I will abide by your 2 minutes. Please don't bully me, because I have the right to speak. I'm
I
a
know.
taxpayer and I'm a public official.
Let's go. Let's move it along.
My point is that we have worked hard on this budget, and you all know that. And we have done due diligence, and our students deserve to be able to have an education. If we have to split it online, which is and half at home, whatever we can do, it is beyond our control. So I'm in sincere hopes that this town council would demonstrate that to our citizens of this town, to show them that we care about our children, make sure that they're going to get a high quality education through distant learning. Because I can guarantee we're going to end up in that situation again. Let's be prepared and not reactive, but proactive. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, anybody else? Mr. Viveras, this is our last attempt. Mr. Viveras, if you can hear us, you can talk. You're unmuted on our side.
Is there a participation number that he needs?
He's in.
Okay. Just text me saying I need a participation. If he dials in. Okay, tell him. Said 888-475-4499, and the ID is 872-9930-7649. That's all you gotta do.
Council Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to commend Mr. Brown for this packet that he distributed to the council to help us through the departments. It was a great one-page summary sheet that we could get details from, as a kicking off point. But I didn't notice it being online, and I didn't know we have one more budget meeting, the 27th. It might want to be part of the docket for the public to take a look at also.
I don't see why we can't make it part of the docket. And that's a common practice, and Mr. Brownie does this with the budget. It's common practice. Good job. Is Mr. Viveras there yet? Mr. Viveras? Mr. Viveras?
Turn your mic up.
But Mrs. Craig is. Let me know. Superintendent Craig, go right ahead.
On what our chair and vice chair have mentioned, we did send a detailed email to all of you at Mr. Councilman Toronto's request regarding the technology. I'd be happy to share that publicly through a letter to the editor or to Mr. Minkowski that really describes some of the concerns that he had.
Well, that's certainly your prerogative.
Yes.
We have it. I looked it over. I know my fellow councilors were in receipt of it.
The other piece is with regard to the special ed conflict. We had a study done about the regional special education program. The study addressed the conflict between mother and daughter. Just for the record, you need to know that I recuse myself, just like many of our town council or a member of our town council does, when it comes to any contract negotiations. I do not vote on my daughter's contract or anything that has to do with dollars. I do vote. I'm one vote with two other superintendents regarding the needs of our students district-wide or region-wise. With regard to the waste and abuse, part of the reorganization of our custodians was to show that we could save money with a reorganization. The problem was not retaliation. The problem was that we did not adequately negotiate those changes. And as our chair said, this isn't still in legal, so I will not comment anymore. But I didn't want any misconceptions out there that Mr. Minkowski has, and probably someone fed him that information for us to just, again, be discredited. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Madam Deputy? Is there anyone else? Okay. I think we've afforded Mr. Viveris enough of an opportunity. I mean, he can try again next week. I feel like 1969 with him. I'm waiting for the lunar landing, you know? So, I mean, he's tried two different ways to call in here.
Dennis is trying to help us.
Dennis is talking to him now, trying to help.
Councilor Toronto is trying to help him now.
He's on the phone. I'm assuming that's who he's talking to.
How'd you make out, Council?
He's working with it. So he's going to try in or come to the next meeting, but he was curious. He did ask me the question of where in the budget he could see the line item for the computers. He can't seem to locate those. You know what line item they are in the budget?
For the school computers?
Yeah.
So it would be part of the school's capital improvement program.
Yeah,
Do you have
CIP,
the transfers in?
$562,875.
That is part of their regular budget, but it would be a transfer in from the town on this capital improvement program.
All right, we can get that information to
I
Mr.
can
Viveris. We
provide-
can get that to him.
Yeah, so it's not only in the budget documents now, but it's also on
Okay,
the
get
adjustments that
that.
we'll make when the budget is adopted by the council next week.
okay, we can get that to him.
Yes.
Madam Deputy, yes, Council Flynn, you want to make a comment?
No, not unless we have time.
We have time. Go right ahead. You want to make a
Anybody
comment?
online? Okay, I don't want to take time from somebody else. I have sort of a general question for Mr. Brown. And this is kind of a question that I think a lot of people ask. And it's regarding the reimbursement and the impact of that reimbursement. We have spent money, the town has, the school has, and hoping for reimbursement. If that doesn't come or comes partially, what is the impact to the numbers? You know, I assume it would be from the budget, you know, for some last year, maybe some this year.
It would mostly reduce our use of fund balance, depending on which year it's for. So Reimbursement so far is for the prior fiscal year, which we have balanced with a number of different, with a use of fund balance. So it'd be returned to the balance sheet essentially.
Can you explain that in layperson's terms?
We spent reserves from the town expended reserves to balance this year's budget. We borrowed against our reserves. So when the reimbursement comes in, we'll reimburse the town's reserves.
And the reserves live in what sort of?
The general fund balance sheet, it's similar to retained earnings,
Rainy day fund.
Thank you.
rainy day fund.
And it was raining.
Council Lombardi.
Sean, so that's in the town side. On the school side, did they expend funds as a result of COVID-19 that was in their fund balance? And did they do a similar type of thing so that they borrow against it?
Yes,
Alright.
so Cindy and Mark are working together to submit the reimbursement to the state. And the school department would have used reserves to balance their budget.
If they expend funds for this fiscal year now, the one that we're in, we don't have a budget for yet, can the schools use that reimbursement towards their operating budget for the new budget?
Structural deficit.
They could. I don't believe they have a large reserve left to fund operations. The other issue is simply,
It would be part of, if it comes in after the first 60 days of the year, then it will be counted as a revenue in the current year that we're talking about.
And because I don't have it in front of me, what was their fund balance as of the end of the fiscal? What did they borrow against for last year, in last year's budget?
So the school's undesignated fund balance is on page 31 of the budget book. And it's assigned of 1.3 million.
1.3 million.
Yes.
And do we know how much they borrowed against that 1.3 million?
It is undetermined at this point, depending on the amount that is reimbursed from the different funding sources that are available for COVID-related expenses.
All right, and one last question regarding that. So when they figure out their budget for this upcoming year, can they assign some of that that fund balance towards the operating budget for this coming budget?
Using budgeting fund balance for operations, I believe would be against their fund balance policy, but it can be used like we did now for the emergency. That's
But if
what
you
it's
did
for.
that, it would
Right.
probably create a structural deficit, right?
If it's for operations, if it's
could.
related to COVID, which is non-operation, then that's permissible.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Council Toronto.
Just on that thought right there, I mean, purchase of the Chromebooks, is this a Corona thing? I mean, would we be buying all these Chromebooks as a council? Would we be approving all these Chromebooks if we were planning on going? I mean, this is kind of being put in place. The urgency to get these on order and to do this is if we don't go back to school. If we go back to school, they said, we think they should have a Chromebook anyways. That's, it's important that they do. And but primary reason we've had to move so fast in executive order is because we're concerned we won't have those books before the kids go back to school. So is that considered can they use funds out of that 1.3 million? Because this could be associated with the coronavirus, that we have to do this because of the virus.
That's from my perspective.
And there's also the possibility that if it peaks in November or October, they may go back to distance learning.
And then I had a question. I know that they had to submit several budgets. We go back 100%, we go back partially, we go back, if, we don't go back at all. They've had to put plans together around these. Have we seen those, have we seen those budgets? Sean, do we have a copy of that? That they submitted to the state?
I have draft copies and I can ask for the final copies from the school department and provide those to you.
Because I'd be interested in knowing that if we do not go back, or we go back partially, what's that budget look like? Because I would imagine there would be some savings there too. If we don't go back to school, we don't need transportation, we don't need janitorial, the business, the building, and so on. So there's probably going to be a lot of savings. Now, is there going to be expenses associated with this if we don't go back that then will offset the budget, or will there be more revenue available if they don't go back to school that could be applied towards a purchase like this? And could we get the money back? Or could they say, hey, we're not going back to school. We've got all this money left over because we don't need all these supplies and all these departments. We'll pay for the Chromebooks. You guys get your dollar back that we're at this point allocating towards this.
Councilor Flynn.
I just wanted to share, so long as nobody's waiting.
I can't answer that. That's a school department answer.
She's on the phone.
Superintendent Krager?
Thank you. We were required to put in a budget, not for every plan. We put in a budget for the plan that we are recommending, which is full in-person pre-K to 5, partial 50-50 from 6 through 12. That's the budget that we put in for. And I'm not sure what revenues we would have even if we didn't go back to school, because we still have the number of teachers. We still would need some support staff to help with distance learning. We still need custodians. So I'm not quite sure what Councilman Toronto is talking about, there'd be revenues that we could give back or use toward computers.
Well, thank you. And I'm not sure if there are any. That's why I asked the question. I would have to imagine that the revenue is going to be allocated differently if we don't go back to school than if we do go to school. That's why I was asking if we could see the additional budgets that you put together, so I could look and say, okay, well, if they don't go back, this is what they're proposing. If we go back 50%, this is what they're proposing. And if we go back 100%, this is what they're proposing. And that's what you gave to the state. I was hoping we could get a copy of that.
So the copy, the plan that we submitted is really in draft form until the state approves it. It's being vetted by a group that the state has hired called District Management Group. And we will get feedback, we believe, on Tuesday for that. And then we will get approval from the state one way or another. So I would like to wait until we have full approval of our plan before we share it carte blanche with everybody. We will make it a public document. I know, I can see that you're questioning that, because there are a number of questions about the implementation. So I would feel that I would rather get out the information of a plan that is approved by the state.
And when do you think you'll have that back?
We hope to get feedback from the group, as I said, by Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay.
And the ride said 2 weeks turnaround, so that would be the first week in August.
Okay. And just in regards to the Chromebooks, I know that there's a debate that every student should have a Chromebook. I believe today they need access to technology. My opinion was, could we phase them in? But it was said, no, we need all of these Chromebooks because there's a chance we're not going to go back to school. So would you say that the urgency to place the order through executive, order, one of the reasons is because of the virus and the fact that we may not be able to go back to school? Would you say that is one of the top reasons we've had to buy 1,400 Chromebooks so quickly?
So if you listen to the plan that we had proposed, it's K through 5 in school, full-time. The rest of our students would be in for half of the time, out for half of the time. And when they're out and not in school for that day, they need the Chromebooks. And we would need Chromebooks in the event that we have to turn on a dime, whether COVID upticks and we're in school on a Tuesday and Department of Health tells us you're out Wednesday. So we needed those.
And all we were just chatting about a general fund and if that money can be used, to help offset the budget. And it was said that those funds may be able to be used if it was associated with the coronavirus. And I feel like the reason why we're moving so quickly on these Chromebooks is because of the coronavirus. And I was just wondering, would you be in agreement with that?
No, I wouldn't. And I thought my email described all of that to you, why we're not.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President.
Council Santos.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Mrs. Krieger. It's Teresa. I have a question regarding a handout that you gave us regarding expenses versus savings. The Vice Chairman alluded to a couple of questions on this savings versus expenditures. You saved $377,454 because of the 19 virus. On the other hand, you spent $401,600, a difference of $24,146. I'd like to know where you got that $24,146 from. You don't have to answer me tonight if you don't have it. At a later date, you can.
Thank you. We will get back to you.
Thank you very much. I'd appreciate it.
Madam Deputy Clerk, do we have any one? Okay, Council Flynn?
I had a quick question for Mrs. Krieger. So I was to understand that your submissions to RIDE would be 4 different plans. Is that not what happened?
Yes, we did submit the plans. There were. We did provide one budget. We were actually required to submit 3, but the 4th one is full distance learning in the event that we had to go full distance learning. One was everyone in person. We could not accommodate that safety with health and safety. We could not accommodate the numbers in grades 6 through 12 in a safe environment with the social distancing and so forth. That's why our submittal and Department of Ed could kick that back to us and say, no, you have to bring in everybody. We cannot bring in everybody. It would probably take another 14 more buses, and I don't have the space or the personnel to separate the students that way.
Okay.
That was one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Deputy. Okay.
Mr. President?
Council Flynn.
Thank you. I had wanted to comment earlier and
Okay, go right
Councilor
ahead.
Santos got your attention first. So I just wanted to supplement the conversation that Councilor Toronto was bringing up about the potential reimbursements. And I did sit into a webinar about a week and a half ago on the COVID Relief Fund and how flexible the requirements for the applications are being. And the conversation at one point took on the term eco expenses. And what those are, it was the belief in the conversation that if you are spending for things that would be for public health and safety, that they would qualify. Now, this could be anything from software to put out messaging on your website or, potentially Chromebooks if all of a sudden, perhaps your kids, had to go to school for COVID. It's just an issue of justifying and with the scenario that's going on that's forcing you to make these expenses. So I did want to throw that out, that, you know, there is money out there. It is flexible. And then there are applications that, you know, people could put together if they're finding they're having to spend more to keep people safe.
I agree, and I probably saw the same website. I probably listened in on it, but let me just say this. Unless there's something new, I haven't heard of anyone telling me that there's a guaranteed allocation. And that's what I'm fearful of, that there's no guarantee that we're going to receive this money. So that's my fear.
Bob.
Deputy? Vice Chair Spangler. Vice Chair Spangler,
Can you hear me?
we
Thank
can.
you. Thank you. I'm sorry to bother you, Bob. I know you rolled your eyes. I can see it, and I apologize. But I just wanted to comment on regards to the Chromebook.
Not about
Um,
something.
a big thing that's important to remember is that a lot of products for health and safety and technology are back ordered because the entire country is ordering things. A lot of states out west have already gone and committed to online learning. So a lot of things are going to be back ordered. It is very difficult right now to be getting supplies and PPE supplies and disinfectants and those kinds of type things. So the computers are going to be the same issue. And I think that is another thing that we have to think about, of not waiting until the last minute, because if we do go to school for 30 days and then all of a sudden,
Vice Chair, can I interrupt you for 1 minute? Do you know we approved that, right? We approved the purchasing of the Chrome?
yes, I absolutely, and I appreciate that. I'm just trying to, when Dennis was asking about the different dollars and things like that, I'm just trying to explain that we have to order, somebody asked about urgency, and that's why that was urgent. It was because we didn't want to be behind once school started.
And that's why we did it, just like with the PPEs, we'll do the same thing. So I don't, not to interrupt you. I mean, I just don't know where these conversations are going. I mean, this is something we've already approved as a council. Mr. Brown did it under his authority in the emergency. So,
I understand that. I just am trying to clarify what Mr. Toronto was asking about the dollars and moving things around. And so I just wanted to be clear that that's why we had to do it in an urgency way, so that we're not stuck without devices and disinfectants and things of that nature. So no, I know it was approved and I appreciate that. And the whole district appreciates it. So thank you.
Council Toronto wants to make a comment.
Yes, I just want to bring a little clarity to that. What I was looking for was, I feel the reason why we're buying all these Chromebooks, or the reason I'm in favor of buying these Chromebooks, which I am, is because of the coronavirus. We're trying to get prepared so that so we can do distance learning. That's what we're trying to do. That's why we are buying these Chromebooks. Because if there wasn't a virus, we may say, well, let's get 500 and we'll buy 500 more at another time and kind of maybe bring them in stages versus one big lump sum. It's not really the right way to be rotating your technology. So that's my only point. And there are different fundings that may be available if this is associated with the virus. So I'm just exploring avenues of how we can fund this. Right now, it looks like it's coming out of the CIP. And so that's, means another project that was in the CIP will not be getting done, but that's okay because this is very important. But if there are other avenues, other funds that could be used because it's Corona, or, I'm not in high hopes we're going to get a lot of money from the feds. But if for some reason it did happen, and this could be part of what we get back because we are moving quickly so that we have these in case the kids don't go back to school or they partially go back. That was the only point I was making.
Okay, good points on both sides. Madam Deputy Clerk, do we have anyone else that'd like to speak?
I would.
Okay. Vice President.
Thank you, Bob. So I'm listening to the conversation, good conversation going back and forth. And so I would just want to make sure that we don't rely on any potential reimbursement money. That would be a mistake. I've seen that happen with the state before with tobacco money, and they put that money towards their budget, which created a structural deficit. So I agree with what Sean said. If whatever the town borrowed from their rainy day or reserve fund, whatever the school borrow, obviously can't tell the school what to do with their money, but I would recommend that being replaced if there is any type of reimbursement, but I certainly wouldn't rely on it.
Absolutely. Okay, Madam Clerk, I'm going to try one more time. Anybody else? Okay.
Okay, motion to close the public hearing.
Have a motion second to close the public hearing. All in
I'm
favor?
sorry.
Go ahead.
The public hearing remains open. So I'll amend that motion that the public hearing remains open.
And the second public hearing will be a week from today, the 27th at 6 p.m.
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye. Okay, motion to receive said ordinance on its first reading.
Do we have a second? Motion to receive on first reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Consent calendar. Any council wants to pull any items off the consent calendar? Council Flynn?
Can we, excuse me, can we start? Because it's not 7.
Yes, because the meeting officially started.
Okay,
today.
okay, I just
6
want to make
o'clock.
sure.
6
Okay.
o'clock start.
Number 3, number 5, number 6.
Number
please.
3, 5, and 6.
Yes, please.
Okay. Any other council want to pull anything off? Okay.
Okay, motion to approve the consent calendar minus items number 3, number 5, and number 6.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item number 3. Approval of the regular meeting, July 6, 2020.
Motion to approve said minutes.
Second.
The motion is second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Council Flynn?
Oh, thank you. Still not sure when to hop in and make sure it doesn't
Council
get by
Flynn.
me. Thank you. So at the July 6th meeting, I did have to call 2 points of order on Councilor Santos. And the rules of the council, item number 3, does state that standards for professional conduct for council members are set forth in Exhibit A, which states, excerpts include, members must conduct themselves at all times in a courteous, civil, and professional manner. Conduct that may be characterized as uncivil, abrasive, hostile, or obstructive impedes the proper functioning of the town's business. A member's conduct should at all times be characterized by personal courtesy, professional integrity, and patience towards all participants. It also says, all members are expected to conduct themselves according to the highest standards of courtesy and professionalism and owe each other and anyone appearing before them respect, diligence, and protection against unjust and improper criticism or attacks. It also says the chairperson is charged with preserving order and decorum, and in the event a member or anyone appearing before the council engages in behavior contrary to these policies and goals, the chairperson or any counselor shall call attention to the offending behavior, request that it be stopped immediately, and continue on with proper discussion by strict adherence to these rules. Robert's Rules of Order states under votes, notices of motions, points of order, and appeals, that other items that should be in the body of the minutes include points of order and appeals, whether sustained or lost, together with the reasons given by the chair for his or her ruling. Now, I asked the town clerk why the incidents were not in the minutes, and the clerk responded that the president did not make a determination a rule had been violated, and I had not specifically stated what rule was being violated. And I disagree. In the video, which I reviewed, after I stood and called point of order, the president clearly determined a rule had been violated and stated point of order. And then the president made a ruling by saying, let's get back to a civil meeting, acknowledging the violation of civility. So clearly, Madam Clerk, the president made a determination, stated what rule had been violated. And I think that the citizens of Middletown deserve and expect elected officials to behave appropriately for the position they've been elected to, and to present the citizens of Middletown with dignity and respect. So there's clear documents. We have the rules of the council. We have Robert's Rules of Order, and I'm making the following motion. Per the rules of the council.
May I
Exhibit A-
interrupt you for 1 minute? Let me make your motion, but I want to
Okay.
have the
You can
opportunity to speak
respond.
for myself since you already spoke for me.
Well, I just looked at the video,
Okay.
Mr. President.
Okay,
So I'm making the following motion.
okay.
That per the rules of the council, Exhibit A, and Robert's Rules of Order regarding inclusion of points of order in meeting minutes, that the minutes of the July 6, 2020 meeting, agenda item number 8, be amended to appropriately reflect the 2 points of order that Councilor Flynn had to call on Councilor Santos for uncivil behavior. That's my
That's your
motion.
motion?
That's my motion.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
You want to make a comment on it first?
Oh, I do. First of all, you called for a point of order.
Yes.
You stood up, you called for a point of order. You didn't identify what the violation was. You called, you stood up and you just said point of order, and that's what you said. This is
That's
what I
right.
recall. I didn't go back and look at the video, but I do recall what I said. And then I said, in fact, I can recall what Councilor Santos said, which she made a perception of her feelings and her opinion. Do I think that's a violation? No. Do I think it's appropriate to say it then? Nah, not necessarily. But let me just say this. You never said what the violation was. You clearly said point of order. You stood up and said point of order. I recognize your point of order. Now, did you tell me what your point of order was? Did you identify
Did
your
you,
point of order?
so Mr. President, as your responsibility to keep the meeting civil and to enforce the
And what
rules of
did
the
I say
council,
that night?
you could not have said, what is the violation, Counselor Flynn?
Well,
You knew what
personally-
it was. You knew what it was.
And that's why I said, let's keep it civil and let's move along.
That's right.
Something to that effect. Do I think that is a violation? In my opinion, no, but that's just my opinion. Okay? But you have a motion on the floor.
Yes, I
And it's
do.
been seconded.
Can you just repeat the motion, please?
Yes. Let's see. Per the rules of the council, Exhibit A, and Robert's Rules of Order regarding inclusion of points of order in meeting minutes, that the minutes of the July 6, 2020 meeting, agenda item number 8, be amended to appropriately reflect the 2 points of order that Councilor Flynn had to call on Councilor Santos for uncivil behavior.
Now, was there a second, or I just assuming there was a second? Was there a second to that?
There was no
Huh?
second yet.
There was no second.
No second, right? Is there a second?
I
Go ahead.
just want to say something. These minutes that we take need to reflect what happens in the meetings. We get stuff in there, and I read these minutes, and honestly, they don't reflect. And I know I've talked to Wendy about this, they can't.
But we shouldn't really be talking that. That's kind of a personnel thing. Maybe this
Okay.
is something for an
No, I'm just saying
executive
the
session.
minutes over time. That's one of
But-
the reasons we like the video, because it's more transparent on a video than what we're
But
getting
the
in our
taking,
minutes.
but the physical taking of the
So,
minutes is a,
in the effort of making sure our minutes are correctly, I'm going to second her motion
Thank you, Councilor Toronto.
okay.
for
You
discussion.
do understand that the taking of the minutes, and if you have any issues with that, it belongs in executive session.
No, I
I-
didn't know that.
Because it does,
I didn't know that.
because it's personnel related,
Okay,
okay?
okay.
So we have a motion and it's been seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Aye.
I oppose that. Can I just ask, can I just ask
No
Peter,
vote on that right now?
Are you?
Choose not to vote on that?
You have to leave the room if you
Oh,
would
you have
like to
leave the
not.
room?
Can't recuse.
No.
well, you shouldn't really second
That
it
would
and
be
then not
abstain,
vote on it.
Mr. Counselor Lombardi, that would be abstaining,
voting.
not recusing.
I mean.
Whoa.
saying-
Time out, time out. I'm running the meeting, Counselor Flynn. I'm running the meeting, okay? Madam Clerk, Counselor Toronto doesn't want to vote for it now. So he seconded the motion, which I believe he can, but he doesn't want to vote for it. So where are we?
No, Mr. President, can I clear that up, please?
You know what? You did vote though, so we got to back this up a little bit. You did vote. You did raise your hand, correct?
Initially, when I seconded it, it was for discussion, okay? I didn't know you were going to go right to vote. It's what seconding meant it would open up for further discussion, but you went right to vote. So I would have had some questions I'd like to ask, and you're telling me I can't talk about the minutes.
Solicitor, you can't.
Well, the motion has been acted on. So the point for discussion on that particular motion is over.
Would you
If you want
concur
to,
that?
and a general discussion about the minutes is, you know, it could be an agenda item for a later docket.
Is that more personnel? Is that a personnel issue?
If he wants to just talk in general about what ought to be in the minutes and what not be in the minutes, as opposed to
Okay, as
this
to
particular
taking them?
incident,
Okay.
then
All right.
that's
If that's the
fine.
way you feel, I just see it as a, you know, we only have two people that take the minutes, so I see it, if it's not being done adequately, then it's a personnel matter. That's the way I look at it.
Well, I think Councilman Toronto can correct me if I'm wrong. My assumption is that he wants to have a discussion about the sorts of things that ought to be in there, he's not criticizing what's being done.
Correct.
But you think that maybe it should be done a different way.
That's correct.
Okay.
Peter's correct.
Would you like to make any comment? I'll give you the opportunity right now, even though we voted
Well, I
on
just
this.
know that in
I'll
the
give you
pa-
the opportunity.
Okay.
Since it's tonight, and let's,
I've talked to Wendy about this in the past, and Wendy knows that I've contacted her and said, you know, when I read the minutes, they don't reflect, like, I've said things and I've made points of my opinions, and they're not in the minutes. Okay? And I just think that's, if a council person is putting something out and has a comment, it should be in the minutes. But I know that it's very difficult to do that. And I'm not telling her how to do her job. I think she does a wonderful job. Maybe we take it into consideration that maybe the minutes, because we got video, maybe at some point, I know we have to take the minutes because it's state law. You know, they haven't said the video can supersede minutes now, but I would feel they're more accurate. That's all. I just want to make a statement about that. I'm not saying how to do it or what they should do. I'm just putting that out for consideration.
okay.
Mr. President.
Mr. Solicitor.
Just one item, just in terms of the motion that was acted upon, it's unclear it was unclear to me just because I can't see Mr. Toronto through Mr. Brown, whether or not he voted for or against or not at all on the motion. And just in terms of the recent amendment to the rules of the council, I just want to make sure he has an
Okay, let's
opportunity
just,
to vote on the record.
In my opinion is, I don't think the minutes are accurate because they don't reflect what happens in the
Okay.
meetings. But I don't think there was an issue there. I didn't hear a reason why she called it. I didn't hear, I didn't
Okay.
see you agree to it, so I'm
All
not
right.
voting for it.
no, we're not going to keep this going. We're not going to
Okay.
keep this going.
So to clarify, you're voting against the
You're
motion?
voting against the motion.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Does anybody else want to make a brief comment? I know Rick does.
It's very difficult for me to be brief, but, that's not what minutes are for. They're not to get every single word that everybody said, or somebody gets their feelings hurt, or somebody gets, because it's not in there what they said. That's why we went to taping in 2000. Because, hey, sometimes I go, hey, well, how come that's not in there what I said? And I used to read them, and I mean, I still read them, but not like combing through them like every, which maybe I should, I don't know, but that's not what minutes are for. Minutes are for general discussion, overview. We've been through this before. And Wendy, I think you said it best, and I can't remember what you said, or Peter, what the purpose of those minutes, but that's why we went to taping. And if there's an issue, then it can be brought up again. That's what it's for. I mean, you can't get, I don't care if you had 100 people in the room, you're not taking minutes. You're never going to get what everybody said. And I'm not sure you want to.
I agree. Councilman Barton.
Paul kind of alluded to what my question is going to be for the solicitor. For the record, on video tonight, are the videos part of the official record so that if we have to go back and clarify the minutes, is that official record?
The video is a public record, and I believe that we're actually
That's my
required
question.
to archive and maintain that record under state law.
So when we have a question or a concern, as Councilor Flynn alluded to, we can go back and we can use that as an official public record. Perfect. That answers the question. I think that clarifies everything.
Good. Thank you. Thanks for asking that.
All right, thank you. Item number 5, resolution of the Town of Smithfield School Department, RE, amend Article 1 entitled Declaration of Certain Constitutional Rights and Principles.
Motion to receive said resolution.
A motion to second to receive, all in favor?
Aye.
Council Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. And the question to the council is the same for both number 5 and number 6. Because of the subject matter of both of these resolutions, this is something that Middletown also wants to weigh in on as a council and as a town. So one is making education a right and one is about civil rights.
Okay.
And is it something that, we want to do some fact checking and pursue to stand behind these concepts? And that's, up to the council.
Okay, good point.
Mr. President.
Councilor Lombardi.
So the piece about making education a right is something that I think has been addressed and is probably going to get addressed again by our legislature. The difference that separates us from Massachusetts and the way they fund education is the fact that in Massachusetts, education is a right in their constitution, and it requires them to fund it differently. If I have the figures correct, it's 60-40 in Massachusetts, roughly, 60% state, 40% municipality. In Rhode Island, it's the opposite. So if this comes out as a constitutional amendment, which has to go to a vote of I believe it's got to go to a vote of the people, but this is an important piece of how we will fund education. They want us to be like Massachusetts, then they have to fund us like Massachusetts. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Item number 6, resolution of the Town of Little
You gotta read it
Compton,
in.
RE, condemning racism and urging efforts to recognize and stop racism.
Motion to receive said resolution.
Second.
Motion and second to receive, all in favor?
Aye.
Councilor Flynn.
Same question to the council. Do we feel that this is a resolution or a type of resolution that we want to stand behind as a town and put forth where we stand on it?
I agree. We should.
I think we
Put something
should.
together. I think we should put something together as a town.
What is the next step on something like?
Read a
this?
resolution.
Pardon?
Draft up a resolution.
Draft one?
You can basically mimic them,
Thanks.
their resolution, and we'll put it in from the town of Middletown.
Just make sure you don't put Little Compton.
Make sure what?
You don't put Little Compton.
Don't put little. Yeah, right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the next item, I'm gonna jump out of line a little bit, and it's off agenda, but I was contacted by the business agent from the fire department and our president of our FOP. They wanted to come down and just make a couple brief statements, and I'm going to, Mr. Brown, could they take your seat over there just to make the statements? Yeah. Would you mind? No. Mr. Andrioli, firefighter Jordan, if you want to go over with them, okay?
6 feet, Bob, 6 feet.
Thank you.
Good evening, Joe.
Good evening. Well, thank you for the invite to come down. We just wanted to come down to formally, I guess, tie up where we left off. As you know, a year and a half ago, we started a journey down here for a new contract, and we had some concerns with staffing. And I'll be honest with you, in a couple of decades of doing this work, I thought that we would never get to where we are today. With the collaboration of the council, We made some adjustments. I think at the beginning of this saga, if you will, there was a communication barrier. And I want to thank the council for removing some of those barriers, for a lack of better words. And then once we got to the table, we were able to come to an agreement that I think is not only good for our members, but I think it's very good for the taxpayers. And it's very rare that we come to an agreement without a long, drawn out, legal battle, et cetera. And really that's a credit to the council. I wanted to thank you personally. As you know, we came here probably a year ago and we were very adversarial. And because we felt that, we needed some safety increases, not only for us, but for the residents. And I will say that this council stepped up to the plate and made the necessary adjustments. It is a safer Middletown today than it has been in decades. And again, that's a credit to the members as well, but it's truly a credit to the council. I want to thank President Sylvia and Vice President Rodrick, who came to the table. And that's something too that's very rare. Normally, it's attorneys and advocates who get in a room, and these two gentlemen came and they rolled up their sleeves and they got right down into the process. And I think that spoke volumes of getting us where we are. So on behalf of the State Association, I want to thank you as a whole council for what you've done for our members and what you've done for the taxpayers to dramatically, and I mean that sincerely, dramatically increase the safety of the residents of Middletown. So thank you, all of you.
And thank you, Joe. And just to make sure everybody knows this, we just officially closed all the gaps, right? We signed all up. It was less than a week ago now. We closed it all up. So it's done, finished deal. I think it's a benefit for everybody, our firefighters as well as the residents of the town of Middletown. And thank you, Joe.
Okay, thank you. Stay safe.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
John, thank you.
John, do you want to make any comments? And I mean, we just signed this. It just got official the other day. So thank you for coming down, Joe.
Just to echo Joe's sentiments there, we'd like to thank the council for coming to the table and working with us to get this deal done. And I'd really like to thank the taxpayers in Middletown for coming out, because without their outreach and outcry, we probably wouldn't be where we are right now. Much safer Middletown at the moment. And we'll continue to get safer as the contract goes by. We got a lot of new hires coming in, a lot of new guys to train, but we look forward to it and we're excited about it. So thank you again. Thank you, council.
Thank you, John. Stay safe.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, I apologize for the interruption, but this just got the ink just dried on this the other day.
Could I just make a comment?
Yes,
I think it's great that they came to bring closure to
they wanted to.
something.
They asked for.
Yes, I admire them for doing that, because lots of times when there's a resolution, people just walk away and nobody knows what the feeling is. But I think that was excellent. Absolutely. I agree with you, Bob.
Agreed, totally.
Vice President?
Bob, I agree with you. And what it also does next time, it sets a very nice stage, approachable stage to be amenable to, talk with each other and have open dialogue and what's best for both sides, the town, the residents, and I think that's critical.
Good.
It sets a great tone.
Okay, so we'll move on. Licenses. Number 12. Application of Castaway Gourmet LLC, Portsmouth, for a mobile food establishment license truck for the 2020-2021 licensing year. This is new.
Motion to grant said license.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any conversation on the truck license?
Yes, please.
Councilor Santos.
We have approximately 6 applications for food trucks. Some of them I know where they're going to be, but others I do not know. Is there a possibility when they apply for these licenses to give a location? Is that possible, Madam Clerk?
Mrs. Santos, under the ordinance that the council recently adopted, the mobile food establishments are limited to the office park and office business zones.
Okay.
And they have to stay at least 750 feet away from any existing brick and mortar restaurant. So that is, those restrictions, location-wise, are built into the license.
All right, that being the case, how many food trucks are going to be at one location, like the Corporate Park Enterprise? How many are there going to be?
I can't answer that.
I know the lemonades are going to be down at the beach. Where else is he going to be? Is he going to be in the Corporate Park, the Enterprise? Who knows?
That would really
Okay.
be the only other locations where they would be allowed to be.
All right, thank you for clearing.
Mr. President.
Council Lombardi.
Do we know if any of these applicants are, want to make a comment tonight? I know Castaway was one who did in the past,
Yeah.
but do we know if they're on tonight?
There was a gentleman from Jordan Duran. He's on. He said he was going to be on in case the council had any questions. That was the only reason why he was going to come on.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just curious. Maybe like Castaway could answer Mrs. Santos's question.
Oh,
but-
I know where he is.
Yeah, I do,
He's
so
up
do
there.
I,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying
Yeah.
for public consumption.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Solicitor. This gives them the mobility to go basically anywhere they want to go, as long as they're not within
No, it gives them
700 feet of a building, right?
only within the office park and office business zoning districts.
Okay.
That's it.
All right.
So basically, the Enterprise Center and the Corporate Park, for the most part, that's it.
Okay.
Oh, all right.
Generally speaking, yeah.
Any other council want to make any comments?
And the park, and the beach.
If you've got a concession contract, yeah.
No, Dell's Lemonade.
Yeah, and the
But that's
beach,
separate, though.
and the beach if the license holder has a concession
Yeah,
contract
that's
with the town.
Okay, thank you.
Council Flynn?
No,
Are you all set? Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion, and it's been seconded, to grant said license. All in favor of granting the license signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, did you get that count? All right. Item number 13, application of Longate LLC, DBA Dell's Lemonade, Middletown, Rhode Island, for 5 mobile food establishment licenses, trucks for the 2020-2021 licensing year.
Motion to grant said licenses.
Second.
Give a motion and a second. Conversation. Council
I have
Flynn.
a question,
Go ahead.
taking off on the beach comment. The applications have changed, I guess, because they're now done through the state.
Right.
Yeah, they're not-
Well, they're done through the state. They have a state license, and then the town can license. That's why we passed this ordinance. That's why they've become new.
So, it's not clear, as I emailed you, whether they're renewing, like where they're going to be, it used to say those kinds of things on there, unless I'm missing it. But how do we know if it's got a beach concession element to it? Because I'm sure Dell's does. There's 5 of these for Dell's, right?
That's separate, I think.
It's not the same.
But they're
No,
on,
it's separate.
so
Right.
these have nothing to do with the beach ones? These are just 5 Dell's
They
trucks
can-
that
they're
won't go to the
5
beach?
trucks, But they can go to the beach because they have the concession there.
They're the contract.
So that's
But
part
there
of their
wouldn't be,
contract.
there
But it
would not
wouldn't
be
be
5 of them
indicated
all
on
at the
this.
same
There
time.
wouldn't be 5 all at the same time.
Right, and it wouldn't tell us on this that they have the concession element.
Right.
Okay, so,
Okay?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none. We have a motion, and it's been seconded. I'm going to support this one because the proprietor is a Middletown resident.
Right.
He has a business in Middletown. So I'm going to support this one.
Can't steal my thunder.
Vice President.
I'm good.
Would you like to
No,
echo that?
no, I echo your comments.
All right. So we have a motion, and it's been seconded to grant. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item number 14, application of Longate LLC, DBA Dell's Lemonade, Middletown, Rhode Island, for 2 mobile food establishment licenses, carts, for the 2020-2021 licensing year. This is new.
Motion to grant said licenses.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Conversation. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 15, application of Amano LLC, DBA A Amano Pizza and Glado, Newport, Rhode Island, for 2 mobile food establishment licenses, trucks for 2021 licensing year. This is new.
Motion to grant said licenses.
Second.
Okay. Conversation. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Application, number 16, application of 1899 LLC DBA La Costa Lobster and Tacos, Newport, Rhode Island, for a mobile food establishment license truck for the 2020-2021 licensing year. This is new.
Motion to grant said license.
Second.
A motion has been seconded. Conversation. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Application of Jordan Duran, DBA Simple Merchant Coffee, Dartmouth, Mass, for a mobile food establishment license cart for the 2020-2021 licensing year.
Motion to grant said license.
Second.
A motion has been seconded. Conversation.
Yes.
Vice President.
Wendy, do you know if this is the food trucks that have been going for years, like the Rhode Island nurseries? Is that what this is?
No.
Okay.
Those are not.
Okay.
Those are different trucks.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion and it's been seconded to grant license. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, ordinances. An ordinance of the town of Middletown. This is a second reading. An ordinance and amendment to the town code, Title 3, Administration, Title 36, Fee Schedule, Section F, Police Department, Subsection 7, Firearm Purchase Application, Fee, see attached ordinance.
Motion to adopt said ordinance on its second reading.
Second.
Okay, conversation. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Town council matters. Number 19, communication of Council Toronto with enclosures, RE, requesting the town council to review and discuss the minutes from the last Senior Affordable Housing Subcommittee meeting.
Motion to receive said communication.
Second.
A motion is second to receive. Councilor Toronto.
Thank you, Mr. President. I forwarded the minutes to the council. I hope you all received those. We had the presentation from our contractor, Frank Spinella, for the town council. We all voiced our opinions on a number of the things about the drawing. We kind of narrowed it down to a particular drawing that we were interested in. And we asked the council, we would like to get the feedback of the of the subcommittee that I chair for the senior affordable housing. We had that meeting. Again, we have the minutes here. I'd like to maybe just go down and highlight a few of the recommendations and things to consider, the council to consider. You'll see that some of this is in line with what we were looking for as well.
Go right ahead.
I think Arlene may be on the call at some point here. She might want to weigh in. I know she's busy. She's visiting a friend in the hospital, so she said she might not be able to make it. So we had the subcommittee. We also had Sean and Frank at the meeting as well. Frank presented the details of the proposal, of the look and feel of the building that we're looking at over on Berkeley and Peckham. And so just a couple of it as I go down here. We asked people to make their recommendations, suggestions, some considerations. Frank did open it up and basically said he was charged to maximize the site without impacting the ball field. So a number of those drawings, the building was way back and along a butter's property. Some of them were right behind it. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to impact the ballpark. That was one of the things that the subcommittee just didn't want to entertain. And I don't think the council wanted to entertain that as well. But that was in one of the options. Arlene was looking at it and wanted to make sure they had ramp access. Parking was a big thing too. How do we get in the buildings, out of the buildings? Are there ramps for the seniors to go up and get into the building. We wanted to try to make sure that they didn't have to walk long distances to get to the building. And also to make sure that the parking would accommodate when they have a special event as well. So we have a special event, you're gonna have people living there. We need to kind of look at that. Parking was definitely one that everyone was wanting Frank to look at. So again, top priority. Let me just look here. Again, the ball field.
Dennis, I have, Bob, I have a
Go ahead,
question.
Paul. Yeah.
Good. Is that okay?
Sure.
Thank you. So one of the things that I couldn't make that meeting because of work, but one of the things that I read here, and of course, my sister had my ear about it, was the 3-story building. So, you know, I didn't think about it until she said it, until I read it here. So I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that, if you're good with a 3-story building in that neighborhood. Now, if that thing's in the ground and it's a 3-story that looks like a 2-story, that's one thing. But if it's 3 stories, that's pretty high in that area. So I just want to put that out there and let you know that it's in writing. It's right here on the first page, 3rd paragraph down. And when I looked at the when we had those conceptual drawings the first time, a month and a half, 2 months ago, I don't remember anything that said 3-story building. Now, am I in favor of this? Of course I'm in favor of it. But I just, you know, some things when you see a nice drawing and nice landscaping and, you know, it's different than when anybody that's been on the planning or zoning, you know that, hey, wait a minute, I approve that. Sometimes it's not what it appears to be. So just want to bring that to your attention. 3-story building on Green Avenue. I don't know.
Hey, don't be stealing my thunder, okay?
Sorry. I'm just reciprocating somebody. I don't know.
Let me just add that was one of the bigger concerns of the subcommittee as well, was the 3-story building. When we originally were looking at this, we were looking at working within the framework of what was there. Okay, with some changes, but not a lot. And we were looking at maybe 30 to 40 units, not 50 to 60, because we don't feel that area can handle that much capacity, especially when you got the senior center there. So we were always looking at saying, is there another building that we want to look at, you know, just to build up the number of units, because then it becomes a little bit more affordable. So that's kind of what we were looking at. So when the 3-story building came into play here, that kind of raised some eyebrows. So Terry, do you want to add to that?
If that's okay.
Council.
I wanted to address the 3-story because it was not clear, because the pictures, the drawings were only 2-story, but in the upper right where it said potential units, that is when they broke down, oh, if you had 2 units, you'd have so many. But if you had 3 units, or 3 levels, 3 stories, you could have this many units. So it was not visual in the picture. It was only in like number crunching, and it does make a difference.
Okay, and then,
So timing wise, I know initially one drawing I saw that night, I think that was the one that was the preferred drawing based upon Frank's input or whoever input, but obviously the council has the say of what would go there and what concept it would be. Timing wise, Sean, I saw in your notes, you have something in there that says what meet a deadline. So I would just like to make sure everyone's aware of the deadlines. If we're going to make this particular year's deadline.
We're waiting for the architect to get back to us on a schedule, so we should have that for the August meeting.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that, say it's 30, 40 units, but it's got to be 3 stories. Well, I wouldn't support that in that neighborhood. That's me personally. I just don't think if 3 stories fits on Berkeley Avenue in that particular where it's going to be at. So from a timing perspective, if, you know, I know the architect could get back and the council could say yes, yay or nay, but that's just where I was going with that.
So I think along those lines, I would need to know whether or not a 3-story building is offensive and not desired there. I would need to know that. because it will impact everything, really, not only the design, but also the financials associated with the project. So
I know one of the questions that I asked the last time we discussed this was, how many units did we decide that we wanted? And how many would be feasible? And how many would make the economic portion of this work? Are we still looking into that, or did we come up with a number?
we're working on that. So we're working on that. We're working on the market analysis for the project and for the town. But if 3 stories is just something we should take off the table, then I would just like to eliminate that work now, if that's the desire of the council.
I mean, I'm in agreement with, I don't think it should be 3 stories.
Okay.
But I also want to make sure that we have enough units there to make it economically feasible for us. Because there has to be a break-even number. And, I mean, we don't want to put a large influx of apartments, say, if we don't need them. And that's why it's important to get the study done, so we know exactly, you know, we're not going to know to the apartment, but at least we know, hey, what do you think we should have? What is in the market? What is the market calling for? So
And we feel, a lot of questions in there, right? But we do feel that based on what the state says, okay, but that's just a number. And I think your idea of doing a study and looking at this, because I do believe that there's different portions of the population that need different things. Not everyone needs that housing, right? So we don't want to build so many that they're not used. So I think it's a good idea to do that, and we look forward to getting that information. But I don't think 30 and 40 is going to put too big of a dent into what we might need.
Good.
That's off the surveys and things like that. So I don't think we're pressing that number. That
Okay.
would be my bet. Okay.
Good.
I would like to see us move forward to try to identify another building. What we're trying to do is hit a deadline here of the end of December 2020. If we don't hit this deadline, then we're going to have to wait another year. And some of the subcommittee was saying, well, why are we going to rush this? We said, well, we want to get this started. You know, we wait a long time to break ground. So we don't want to lose that momentum. But I want to keep this moving as well. But I don't want to rush it. So we just, you know, so we can make that deadline. We didn't anticipate, the subcommittee did not anticipate hitting that deadline. It was kind of, we were a pleasant surprise when he told us that we may be able to hit that deadline. But, and that was good. So if we can agree upon something and we get 30 to 40 units and we can hit that deadline, that would be great. But that's up to the council.
Council Trono, is that deadline you're referring to, is that to get us in the queue upstate?
I'll let you speak.
Yeah,
Correct.
Sean, I know you and I've had that conversation. Why don't you explain that, how the process works?
There is a set of drawings. There's approvals that we need from the planning and zoning board. And there's certain design work that needs to be submitted to the state in a complete application in order to get in line for the tax credits that are necessary to finance the project and to attract a developer. So on a very, very aggressive timeline, which is what we were originally working off of or trying to stick to, we were shooting to try to have something up to the state for December. Big part of that discussion was, well, now we have some proposed reconsideration that we need to factor in, and we also need to talk to the architect about what timeline he needs to follow in order to get the drawings to us. So it was always tight. I think at this point, if we're going to start looking at a 2-story building instead of a 3-story building, and then possibly needing to look at a second site, we're more realistically looking at December of 2021 than trying to fit something in for December 2020. But again, I need to follow up with Frank with what feedback he's getting from the architect at this point in time.
I know this is a tough question, but do we know how detailed we have to be to get us in the queue?
Detailed.
It has to be extremely detailed.
Yes, and I explored that with Frank, and even to the point of let's at least submit something that we get comments back on, so that we're in the queue. And he expressed that that would be frowned upon greatly by the people at the state, that that was not a good approach or strategy. So we would be better off applying with a complete application with the approvals in 2021 than sort of a poorly crafted submission in 2020.
Council Lombardi?
So as you guys have been going through this, you know, and I've been kind of looking around in different communities, similar to Middletown in some ways. I've seen two examples that I thought were okay. One was, it's more expansive place, but the Benjamin Church Manor in Bristol has been there for a while. It's a little more spread out. They had a little bit more land to work with back then, but it's a nice design, and they're all kind of one level, easily accessible for senior citizens, whether it's people who need assistance or even just people who have a hard time getting up and downstairs. It's a good example of, it's bigger than what we're looking at, but it's a good example of a design. There's another one in Warren, and I can't think of the name of it for the life of me. It's on Medicum Avenue. As you go out all the way to the end, there's a church, and then right around the corner, you'll see some what look like two-story apartment buildings. They're brick, nice design. Again, senior living, some of it's assisted, but most of it is independent living. It's affordable. I have a relative that lives there. I just can't think of the name of it, and I'll get it for you. But it's something you may want to just take a ride by and look at.
Yeah. Name of the place or the relative?
Well, it's my aunt. My grandmother lived in Benjamin Church for a while. That's how I know about that place. But the bottom line is that, so these are communities that are kind of similar to Middletown, but I will tell you, when you talk about demand, I don't know if we can ever build enough to accommodate the demand for this type of senior housing. So yeah, they're looking for another spot. I've got one in the top of my head, but yeah, we could, well, we're going to use more for sure. So yeah, we need to get going, but those are two good examples. I'll get the name of the one tomorrow.
Thank you.
Council Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. President. Since we were talking about the application, the timeline, I just wanted to give sort of an umbrella comment as to why the Senior Housing Subcommittee minutes are in front of the council. When Mrs. Santos brought up the fact that, you know, there should be a one-way, one direction parking flow or driveway flow, the architect was going to go back or our project manager to the architect and have them incorporate that into the drawings. You may remember that. And as the subcommittee met and came up with these minutes with some of the, you know, distance of walking in the different scenarios, and the fact that there really wasn't any parking accommodation for non-resident members of the senior center. So if you were going to take a yoga class or play bingo, there aren't any or many spaces for you to drive up unless you live there. So these are sort of some of the things that we were talking about. And I think the reason we're here is to, I believe, ask the council to approve going to the architect to incorporate some of the ideas and comments that came from the Senior Housing Subcommittee to make sure that we got a very workable plan. So I just wanted to umbrella what we're doing here, because the subcommittee did, unless I got that wrong, Sean, because we didn't have the authority to do that, to direct any redrawing. The subcommittee didn't.
I think the main thing is the concept of limiting the height of the building to 2 stories. I think Mrs. Santos's comments were echoed about, you know, by the subcommittee, you know, things like parking. Those are things that are, those are smaller details to the overall project, but changing from the 3-story building to a limit of 2, it has a greater impact on the design and also on the fiscal component of it. So my feeling was, so because the council had approved whatever it was, design B1, which had that feature, that you should be made aware of the change and as a group, as a council, approve that.
Thank you. Councilor Trump?
No, that was good. I just wanted to say that Mrs. Santos' opinion was definitely seconded by everybody. Make sure that
Good
flow can
suggestion,
go,
great suggestion.
can go around the building, not one way in, one way out. That didn't make a lot of sense. So that was well thought of and incorporated.
Councilor Santos.
Thank you, sir. I have some concerns that I've been thinking about this building. There were classes that were held down in the basement. Is that going to be considered part of the housing unit?
We'd have to talk to the architect.
Okay.
It's a good question.
Okay, that's another. And then the ball field. Is the town in complete ownership of that ball field? At one time, I believe, if my memory serves me right, it was owned by the Colonial Dames.
I want to say the solicitor has looked at that. He reviewed that along with Oliphant School at some point in time, and that is the town's property. I believe there's a small portion out beyond the outfield where we pay less than $5 a year to rent a piece of the property, but it's insignificant relative to this project. It doesn't.
So if we were to move the ball field and use it as parking, what do I want to say? Would that portion that the Colonial Dames would we take it over? Would that
No,
be?
there wouldn't be a conflict there. No.
Okay, all right.
So I think if we could make a decision tonight in regards to how many stories the building's going to be, what our preference would be for that. I think all the other pieces, as Sean says, can kind of come together, and I think that will help take care of the parking because we're not going to have to worry about 60 units or 50 units. We're really bringing it down. So I think that will help the parking situation. And when we did talk to Frank, he said he could turn it around pretty quickly. I was surprised. I don't know, if he said 2 weeks maybe to be able to get the changes back.
I'm going to show you how you tactfully get that decision. Does anybody here have any arguments or reasons why we should have it 3 stories? I don't see any reason why we should have it 3 stories.
Okay. So do we have to vote on anything or just let Mr. Brown know that we just need?
I think Mr. Brown got the hint.
I just want to make sure I have direction from there's 4 of you. So yes, I'm good.
You got it.
Did you really want an answer to that question?
Go right ahead.
I wasn't quite sure if you wanted a response. So the question is, does anyone have any reasons
Does anybody
to oppose 3 stories?
want 3 stories or more?
I think it depends on the footprint of the building and what the delta in units that 3rd story would give and the impact on services and parking that would entail. Now, maybe we could all compromise and part of it could be 3 stories and part could just be 2 stories.
Well, I think the vice president, when he brought this up, was how it would look in that neighborhood, being a 3-story building. And I don't think it really fits in that neighborhood. Being 3
And also sorry, Terry, I want to know if there's going to be an impact to the neighbors, the budding neighbors, to their property values. I mean, to me, that's what really was driving my 2 things. That would it fit? I don't think it does. And second thing across my mind was, how would it impact property values over there?
Well, may I respond?
Yes.
Some of the drawings, the way they were presented, and again, I don't have them in front of me, my apologies, but they were sort of camouflaged. So you'd see the old school and senior center, and so you'd have the facade, but it was totally different behind that. And you can do a lot with landscaping, tall trees, to camouflage also. I'm not pro or in favor or against. I'm just throwing ideas out there.
Well, you're part of that committee, correct?
I am.
Does this have to be another committee conversation and you come back, or?
I don't think so. I mean, we did have the conversation with when do we share our designs with the abutters, and we felt that it should be maybe people were leaning towards when we have more of a final plan to show to them. And then there were other folks saying, well, maybe we want to show it to them sooner than later, than before we get to those final plans. So this is the timing comes into play again. So we can have another meeting, we can open it up to the community, you know, all that can happen, right? But we're not gonna make the 2020 line.
I agree.
Okay?
But
Now,
it
if you
seems
say
like there's
that's
some
okay, then that
hesitation.
gives us a whole nother year to figure it out.
But there seems like there's some hesitation by one of your committee members, Councilor Flynn.
Not hesitating, you were going down the path of 2 stories. And I know that that is going to create some challenges. The market study would be helpful because it may challenge a need, it may challenge finances. I'm not saying a 3-story belongs there, but I'm saying in some of the renditions of the drawings, they like I said, they hid some of what was behind the streetscape and made it, you know, something to consider.
Okay,
Yeah.
what would be your suggested preference right now? To go back to the committee with this or vote on it tonight?
What would the vote be on exactly? The
Whether it's
stories?
going to be higher than 2 levels.
I hate to say without input from our project manager who could counsel as to, you know, the potential of which design may do better with 3 stories than others for the neighborhood.
Mr. President,
Councilor Toronto?
we currently have the drawing as we have a 3-story building drawing already done.
Mm-hmm.
What we're asking to do is maybe see what it looks like with a 2-story.
I think that the drawings.
So you already have the 3.
Well, they
Can
show
you go back and
2
show us what 2 is, and then we can look at
Well,
it?
that's what I'm saying. Do we want to vote on this tonight? I think most of the people are in line, but one of your committee members, Councilor Flynn, doesn't know whether she wants it to be 3 stories or 2 stories. Is that a fair perception of what you said?
Yeah, I don't have enough data to make that
I actually have the
determination.
drawings here, and any drawing, whichever concept it is, I don't know if this is the one that was the preferred one or not, it's just a bird's eye view. So it's very difficult to see. That's why I never anticipated saying 3 stories until, you know, my sister started twisting my ear a little bit the other day about it. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's 2 stories. She goes, no, you weren't at the meeting. It's 3. I'm like, I don't think that's good, in my opinion. I mean, now, does that mean that they come back and maybe there's a different drawing of a 2-story, or it's maybe sunk in the ground to look like a 2-story? Kind of like, you don't realize, kind of like the police department. Now it's on a different landscape and maybe something could be done there. I don't know. But if you look at the front of the police department compared to the back is massive, but there's no neighbors. The town owns that. So, you know, or maybe you come back with a spread out version of it. Maybe there needs to be more land use used for a 2-story to meet the required 30 to 40 or 50 or whatever it is.
Well, what would the committee members suggest to the council tonight? What they'd like?
I'd like to ask Sean to go back and talk with our project manager and see if we can take the plan we have currently and what's it look like with a 2-story building and how many units would we be getting? And if we do the 3, and we could, maybe Sean can mention our concerns of the aesthetics to the neighbors, and if he has any recommendations of how they may be able to, like Paul said, maybe they shrink the building from a look standpoint, but we're able to have more capacity. So I'd like to maybe hear back from our project manager.
All right,
Mr. President.
Councilor Lombardi.
So just from my perspective, when I hear you go from the 3-story to the 2-story and the reduction in the number of available units concerns me, because we have a strong need. So as we cut back, you know, the number of units, I'm concerned about that.
Sure. I'm
sensitive to Vice President Roderick's concern about property values and the people in the neighborhood, and how the perception to them, what it's going to look like and what it's going to do to their property value. So that's a concern too. But the way architecture is today and the way designs can be done today, I agree with Paul. You know, you may be able to hide it a bit. You know, Terry's got a good point with some landscaping and creative design. You may be able to accomplish the need piece of it and the design piece of it to make it more appealing and not to affect property values. So, and the footprint may have to be more land use, like Paul said. Maybe you can accomplish it that way. So I think, yeah, maybe we need to get a look, what both will look like with some creative designing and stuff. I'm not ready to vote on it tonight. I think we need to see more. We need to see a little bit more. I don't want to go too long because I want to get it under the timeline that we have to get it under. So it needs to happen sooner rather than later.
But certainly not going to happen next week.
Can I just make a comment? So in the upper right-hand corner of each design, and I believe this was the preferred design. Is that the one?
B1, I think.
B1, yeah. B1. So that was the preferred design of the council that evening. And in the upper right-hand corner, it says new building, 34 units with 2 floors, 51 units with 3 floors.
And that's what we talked about, the market study, to see what we.
Yeah.
for-
And there's other drawings, scheme D, 40 units on 2 floors and 60 units on 3 floors. So, and I believe Frank's application is approved for 30 to 40 units. So that would fit right into a 2-floor, 2-story, one of these designs.
Council Santos.
Thank you, Mr. President. The basement, would that be used as
I'm not
apartments?
sure if they're using that. I don't know if we got to that detail level. Go on.
Because the math classes and home ec classes were held down there.
Sure.
The upper part, which you would have from the auditorium, you have a number of steps going to the English class, history, and other classes that were held. Now, if I understand everybody's discussion tonight, you want to put another floor on top of that? You do?
I believe
Okay.
that's the design, yes.
Now, is that building going to be able to take any further weight on that? That's not a new building.
These are all questions for the architect, but I would say just not necessarily look at what's there right now, because
Right.
what ends up having to be there will have to accommodate seniors, will have to accommodate the challenges of being older, the challenges of ADA. So I know part of the discussion tonight was looking at other buildings. I have visited another building, another site with Frank. It was not a good site for seniors. So it was crossed off. So, and that was based on stairways and basements and all of that other stuff. So I think you have to look, again, like Paul said, we have a bird's eye view. We're dealing with big blocks. And we're basically at that point where we're telling the architect to move from building blocks to some sort of detail. And again, I think tonight what I heard the council say is, and I'll pull in Councilor Flynn's comments. The council wants something that looks like a 2-story building. And if the architect can make 3 stories look like 2 stories, we're okay with that. Is that an accurate statement? And
All the way around, not just the front.
yes,
Yep.
yes. So, and we're worried about the people that live around it, and that aesthetically, and I grew up in that area, that it's something that fits in with the houses that have been there since the 60s and the
Yep.
house that got built across the street just in the last 2 years. That's what we're trying to accommodate.
Yep.
Council Flynn.
And just to comment, Sean, when you're talking to Frank, at some point, I think a 3-dimensional, if it's not too much cost, I don't want to incur an expense, a major expense, but if they could turn the drawing into a 3D view, that would be helpful, because I don't think that we can tell from the bird's eye, really. So when they've addressed the parking and the driveway and, some of the other issues, that would be, I think that would get us to a vote, because we could actually see it.
Have a better perception of it, certainly.
Yes.
And I agree. I don't know what kind of programs he's using to draw these, whether it's SolidWorks or Pro-E, whatever kind of programs he's using. So, but I'm sure he should have the capabilities to give us a 3D. Okay. We have a motion, and it's been seconded to receive the communication. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
You want the 3 favorite words, Mrs. Vaughn? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I'll see you a week from today.
All right, thank you.